My daughter signed me away on a Tuesday morning while I was eating oatmeal. By noon, I was sitting in a beige room at Hillcrest Manor, and by sunset she'd already changed the locks on the house I built with these two hands. The house in Newport Beach, $2.1 million worth of ocean view she didn't earn one nail of. I came over from Greece in 1976 with $80 American and a cousin's address in Astoria scribbled on a napkin. 47 years later, my daughter Theodora and her husband decided I was an inconvenience. What she didn't know, what she still doesn't know, as I'm telling you this, is that I heard everything, every single word. And the man who hauled fish at the Fulton Market for $6 an hour didn't get senile at 73. If you want to know what I did about it, stick around, hit that subscribe button. This isn't even the part where it gets interesting yet. Let me back up. I came through JFK in October of 76, 26 years old. My English was so bad I ordered water by pointing at the faucet. My cousin Nico got me a job at a diner in Queens, washing dishes for $2 an hour under the table. I slept on his couch for 14 months. By 1978, I'd saved enough to buy a hot dog cart on 34th Street. By 1981, I had 3 carts. By 1985, I had a coffee shop on Lexington and 52nd, and that was the year my daughter was born. Theodora. We named her after my mother back in Thessaloniki. My wife Despina, God rest her, picked the spelling out herself. I worked 16-hour days through Theodora's whole childhood. She never wanted for anything. Catholic school, ballet lessons, summer camp in the Berkshires, the orthodontist that cost me as much as a used Cadillac. When she got into UCLA in 2003, I cried in the parking lot of my own restaurant. By then I had 4 locations across Manhattan, and I was already looking at properties out west because Despina's lungs needed the dry air. The doctors had given her 2 years. She made it 5. Theodora was a junior when her mother died, and I sold 3 of the 4 restaurants within 6 months and moved out to California to be closer to her. That's how we ended up in Newport Beach. I bought the house on Bayside Drive in 2008 right after the crash for $640,000. I paid cash. 5 bedrooms, 2-story, back patio looking right at the harbor. I gutted the kitchen myself, tile by tile with these hands that still had calluses from the carts. I planted a fig tree in the side yard the same week we moved in. That fig tree is 15 years old now. It produces more fruit than any tree I ever saw in Greece. Theodora finished UCLA, got her MBA at USC, married a man named Bradford who works in commercial real estate. Bradford. Even his name sounds like he's never lifted a thing heavier than a tennis racket. They have 2 kids, my grandsons, Hunter and Beckett, 11 and 9. I love those boys like my own breath. I taught Hunter to bait a hook off the dock when he was 4. I taught Beckett to roll out phyllo dough when he could barely see over the counter. And I thought, naively, that meant something to my daughter. It started in February. Theodora began visiting more often, which was unusual. She'd always been busy. Bradford, too. They'd swing by on holidays, and that was about it. But that February, she started coming on Sunday afternoons, asking me questions. How was I sleeping? Was I remembering to take my blood pressure pills? Did I need help organizing my paperwork? I should have seen it then. I'm an old man, not a fool. But I wanted to believe my daughter was just being a daughter for once. So I let her into my filing cabinet. I let her photograph my deed. I let her walk through the house, checking the smoke detectors. She was casing the place. My own daughter. The first time I knew something was wrong was March 2nd. I came home from the farmer's market early because they were out of the lamb I wanted, and there was a black BMW in my driveway I didn't recognize. I came in through the side gate and stopped at the patio door. Theodora was in my living room with 2 people I'd never seen, a woman in a gray suit and a man with a clipboard. The woman was opening cabinets. The man was photographing my furniture. Theodora, I said, who are these people? She jumped. I will never forget the way her face changed. Surprise then, something cold and calculating. Then a smile that was as fake as the flowers Bradford brought to Despina's grave the one time he came. Dad, you're home early. These are my friends. They're interior designers. I wanted to surprise you with some ideas for updating the place." The woman in gray gave me a look. She knew I was the mark. She knew Theodora was lying. And in that moment I knew it too. But I was so stunned that my own daughter would lie to my face that I just nodded and said hello and went into the kitchen to put the groceries away. The man asked about the den, about the square footage, about whether the foundation had been redone. Interior designers don't ask about foundations. I waited 2 days. I didn't say anything to Theodora. Instead, I called my old friend Kostas, who runs a security company in Long Beach. We grew up 2 villages apart in Greece. Kostas owes me his life from a thing that happened in 1989 that I will not get into here. I told him I needed cameras in my house. The kind that don't show up if someone walks through with a wand. I needed audio. I needed everything. I told him I thought my daughter was up to something. He didn't ask why. He came over the next morning at 5 a.m. with a duffel bag, and by 10 he was gone. And I had 8 cameras and 4 audio bugs in my own home, recording to a server in his office that nobody but the 2 of us could access. I want you to understand something. I did not do this because I'm paranoid. I did this because 47 years in business teaches you that when something smells wrong, it is wrong. And you'd better find out what it is before someone else decides for you. 2 weeks later, on March 18th, Theodora invited me to dinner at her house. Bradford was there. The boys were upstairs. There was a man at the table I didn't know. Mid-50s, expensive haircut, cufflinks. Theodora introduced him as Dr. Marlowe Grenville, a geriatric specialist who was a friend of theirs from the country club. I shook his hand. His palm was soft as a baby's. "Dad, we just want to have a casual conversation," Theodora said. "The Bradford and I have been worried about you. You've been more forgetful lately. Last week you called me twice in an hour about the same thing. I had not. I had called her once, to remind her that Hunter's birthday was coming up. And the gas burner thing," Bradford added. "I had left a burner on for 10 minutes once, 6 months ago. I caught it myself." The doctor smiled at me with those soft hands folded on the table and asked me a series of questions. What year was it? Who was the president? Could I count backwards from 100 by sevens? I answered everything correctly. Of course I did. I balanced 4 restaurants books in my head for 30 years. But I could see in his eyes that the answers didn't matter. He was writing on a notepad regardless. I leaned over once, just slightly, and saw the words "moderate cognitive decline" already written down before he'd asked me a single question. I went home that night and I sat in my kitchen with the lights off, looking at the fig tree in the moonlight, and I cried for the first time since Despina's funeral. Then I stopped crying because crying does not solve problems. I called Kostas and asked him to send me everything from the past 2 weeks. The audio from the dinner was on his server within an hour. I played it on my laptop in the dark, and I listened to my daughter and her husband and that smooth-handed doctor laugh after I left. They drank wine. They talked about how easy it was. The doctor's report would be ready by Friday. The petition would be filed Monday. The hearing would be expedited because Bradford's law firm partner would assign it to a judge who owed him a favor. "He'll fight it," Bradford said. "Let him," Theodora said. "Dad doesn't know any lawyers worth a damn. He uses some old Greek guy in Long Beach who probably can't even file electronically. By the time he figures out what's happening, the house will be sold, and he'll be in Hillcrest Manor counting jelly beans." 2.1, the doctor said. "What's your cut?" "Bradford gets 10% for the legal coordination," my daughter said. "You get 15% for the diagnosis, and the rest goes into a trust I control for Dad's care, of which, of course, only what's actually spent on him gets spent." Then she laughed. My daughter, the girl I taught to ride a bicycle on 73rd Street, the girl I held while she cried over Despina's coffin, laughed about stealing my house. I sat in that dark kitchen until 4 in the morning. By the time the sun came up, I had a plan. The next day, I called my old Greek guy in Long Beach. His name is not relevant for this story, but I'll tell you, he's 78 years old. He has handled my legal affairs since 1991, and he is one of the smartest men I have ever met. I told him everything. I played him the audio. He was quiet for a long time on the phone. "Stavros," he said, "I want you to listen to me. What they are doing is a felony. Multiple felonies. Conspiracy to defraud, false medical certification, perjury before the court, elder abuse. We can destroy them. But you have to be patient. You have to let them think they're winning." "Can you do that?" "I could. I'd been a fisherman in the Aegean as a boy. Patience is the only skill that actually matters." The hearing was March 28th. I went. I let them put me on the stand. I let Bradford's friend, a sleazy lawyer named Cromwell, ask me condescending questions about whether I knew what day it was. I let Dr. Grenville read his report into the record. I gave deliberately vague answers. I said, "I don't remember," twice when I absolutely remembered. I let the judge see what they wanted her to see. A tired old immigrant who couldn't keep up. The judge granted temporary guardianship to Theodora. The order was effective immediately. Bradford drove me to Hillcrest Manor that afternoon. Theodora had already packed a suitcase for me. She had not packed my reading glasses. She had not packed a photo of Despina from our wedding day. She had packed a bathrobe I'd never worn and 3 pairs of dress shoes I would never need in a place where everyone shuffled around in slippers. Hillcrest Manor cost $9,400 a month. The room was beige. The hallway smelled like overcooked broccoli and Lysol. My roommate was a man named Ezra Pollard who had been an air traffic controller at LAX for 31 years and was now 86 and sharp as a steak knife. He took one look at me when I walked in and said, "Family put you here?" I said yes. He said, "Want to know how to make their lives miserable?" I said eventually. But first I needed a phone. Ezra Pollard, it turned out, had a contraband flip phone he'd talked his great niece into smuggling in. He charged it in the bathroom outlet. He let me use it whenever I wanted in exchange for the chocolates my granddaughter Theodora used to bring me, which she would now stop bringing because I was dead to her socially. I had my lawyer's number memorized. I called him from the bathroom that first night. "Stavros, the petition you signed before the hearing, did you bring the original?" I had. It was in my jacket pocket. The petition Theodora had given me to review 2 weeks before the hearing, the one I'd never returned, the one that listed the address of my Newport Beach house and the legal description of my business holdings, and that had Bradford's signature on it as the preparing attorney, dated February 22nd. February 22nd was 4 days before Theodora first showed up with the interior designers. In other words, they had drawn up the guardianship paperwork before they had any evidence whatsoever of my supposed cognitive decline. Before the doctor. Before the dinner. Before any of it. They had the documents pre-prepared because the whole thing was a fraud from the beginning. My lawyer told me to keep the paperwork safe. He told me he was filing a motion that night, but the motion would take time. He said the most important thing now was to gather more rope for them to hang themselves with. So I did what he told me. I sat tight. I let them celebrate. And celebrate they did. Theodora moved into the house on Bayside Drive that weekend. She and Bradford listed it for $2.3 million on April 6th. They had 3 offers within 10 days. They selected the highest at $2.18 million, all cash, fast close. They signed the contract April 19th. What they did not know, what they could not know, was that the cameras Costas installed were still recording. Every night, Bradford and Theodora, and sometimes their realtor, and sometimes Bradford's law partner sat in my living room drinking my wine and discussing how they would split the money. The realtor was getting a kickback above her commission. The law partner was getting a finder's fee for handling the trust documents. Dr. Grenville came by twice and was given a check for $40,000 in cash on April 11th. I have him on video accepting it. I have Theodora on video saying, "This is for the diagnosis and any follow-up testimony if Dad's lawyer files an appeal." Now, here is what they really didn't know. The house on Bayside Drive was not, technically, in my name alone. When Despina was sick in 2007, before we moved out for New York, we set up a family trust. The trust was designed to protect our assets in case of medical bankruptcy, which we were genuinely worried about because her care was $8,000 a week. The trust held everything. The Newport Beach house, when I bought it, was purchased by the trust, not by me personally. I was the trustee. But the beneficiaries were named in a sealed document that Theodora had never seen, because the document was held by my lawyer in Long Beach. The beneficiaries were not Theodora. The beneficiaries were Hunter and Beckett, my grandsons, with the funds held in irrevocable trust until each turned 30. Theodora could not sell the house. She did not own the house. I did not own the house. I did not own the house. Hunter and Beckett, in legal terms, owned the house, and the only person authorized to dispose of it was me, the trustee, and only with court approval after determination that the sale was in the beneficiary's best interest. A guardianship of my person did not transfer my trustee authority. That's a separate legal instrument entirely. Bradford, who works in commercial real estate, did not understand California trust law. He had assumed, like most people assume, that the deed in my name meant the property was mine. He had not pulled the underlying trust documents. He had not asked. He had relied on my filing cabinet, which contained the deed but did not contain the trust. Theodora and Bradford signed a contract on April 19th to sell a house they had no legal authority to sell. My lawyer waited until April 25th to file. He filed 3 things simultaneously: a motion to vacate the guardianship on grounds of fraud, a criminal complaint with the Orange County DA's office for elder abuse, conspiracy, and perjury, and a civil suit against Theodora, Bradford, Cromwell, Grenville, and the realtor for breach of fiduciary duty, attempted theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Damages requested: $6 million. The buyers, when they were notified by my lawyer that the seller did not have authority, pulled out of the contract immediately. They were furious, but not at me. They sent their own lawyer after Theodora's realtor. The hearing on the motion to vacate was May 14th. I want to tell you about that morning. I want to tell you because it was the best morning I have had since the Spina was alive. Ezra Pollard helped me pick out my suit, the gray one I bought at Brooks Brothers in 1998 for my 50th birthday. He shined my shoes himself. He had been a Navy man before he was an air traffic controller, and he could shine a shoe to mirror finish. The whole hallway came out to wish me luck. There was a woman named Glenda Voss, 89, who had been a federal prosecutor in the 70s and had been put in Hillcrest Manor by a son who was now using her pension as his personal bank account. Glenda had spent the past month reviewing every document my lawyer faxed me in exchange for a daily piece of baklava I made Ezra's great-niece bring in. Glenda had caught 2 errors in Cromwell's filing that even my lawyer had missed. Glenda was at the hearing. So was Ezra. So was a former priest named Father Caspian Holloway, who had been at Hillcrest for 9 years and who told me on my second night there that God does not love a thief, especially one who was the child of his victim. The hearing was 46 minutes long. The judge, who was not the judge that had granted the original petition, because that judge had recused herself when the criminal complaint was filed, listened to everything. She watched the video of Theodora and Bradford laughing about the plan in my own living room. She watched Dr. Kurdath, Grenville accept $40,000 in cash. She heard the audio of the pre-dinner conversation where they discussed which judge they were going to assign the case to. She read the transcript of the original petition dated February 22nd, 4 days before any concerns supposedly arose. She vacated the guardianship at 11:14 a.m. She referred the matter to the Orange County DA's office for criminal prosecution at 11:15 a.m. She referred Bradford and Cromwell to the State Bar of California for disbarment proceedings at 11:16 a.m. And she awarded me, on the spot, an emergency injunction, freezing all of Theodora and Bradford's assets pending the civil suit. Theodora was not in the courtroom. She had been told by Cromwell that her presence was not strictly required, and she had been afraid to face me. Bradford was there. He sat in the back and turned the color of milk when the judge spoke. Cromwell tried to object 3 times and was overruled 3 times. Dr. Grenville, who had been served with a subpoena that morning, did not appear, and a bench warrant was issued for him by lunch. Outside the courthouse, on the steps, a reporter from a local channel was waiting. My lawyer had tipped off two of them. They asked me how I felt. I said, in English, that has only barely improved since 1976. I feel like a man who is going home. The criminal trial happened over the next 8 months. Bradford pled out to 3 felonies and got 18 months and was disbarred. Cromwell got 24 months and was disbarred. Dromwell got 24 months and was disbarred. Grenville fled to Mexico for a while, but was extradited in November and got 4 years. Theodora, my daughter, my only child, the girl I taught to ride a bicycle on 73rd Street, refused a plea deal. Her trial was in February of the following year. The jury was out for 90 minutes. She was convicted on 6 counts. She got 6 years. I attended every day of her trial. I sat in the front row. I did not speak to her. She tried to catch my eye twice, and I looked through her like she was glass. Hunter and Beckett were taken in by Bradford's sister, who's a decent woman, and who has, to her credit, brought them to see me every other weekend since their mother went to prison. The boys did not understand at first. They are older now. They understand more. Hunter is 14 and asked me last summer if I was going to sell the house. I told him no. I told him the house was theirs, in fact, in a way he would understand when he was older. I told him I planted the fig tree the year we moved in and that he would inherit it and his brother would too, and that whatever else happened in the world, this fig tree would still be there. The civil suit settled out of court when Theodora's lawyer realized the criminal convictions made the civil case airtight. The settlement was $4.8 million. Most of that came from Bradford's family money, his parents being Connecticut money, and not wanting their name in the papers any more than it already was. I put $2 million into a trust for Hunter and Beckett's college education. I gave $1 million to a charity that helps elderly people fight guardianship fraud, an organization I had never heard of before this nightmare started, but which apparently fields thousands of cases a year, because what happened to me is not rare. It is, in fact, an industry. I kept the rest. I am not a saint. I worked for 47 years and I'm not going to pretend I don't deserve to live comfortably for whatever years I have left. I still live in the house on Bayside Drive. The fig tree is doing well this year. I had 80 pounds of fruit in September. Ezra Pollard moved out of Hillcrest Manor and into my guest bedroom by my invitation 6 months after I went home. His family was not happy about it because they had been bleeding his pension. They are now in litigation with my lawyer too. Ezra is 88, and the funniest man I have ever met. We watch baseball every night. Glinda Voss visits on Sundays. Father Holloway died last year, peacefully, and I gave the eulogy at his funeral. Theodora writes me letters from prison. I don't open them. Hunter asked me last month if I was angry. I told him I was not angry anymore. That anger is a weight you carry that doesn't punish anyone but yourself. He asked if I had forgiven his mother. I told him forgiveness is between her and God, and that I am not God. He thought about that for a while. He's a smart kid. He nodded. I taught him how to make spanakopita that afternoon. We rolled the phyllo together at the same kitchen counter where I rolled it with his Uncle Beckett when he was little, and where his grandmother Despina rolled it with me when we first moved in. The thing I want anyone watching this to understand, especially if you are old, especially if you have children who you love and who you suspect might love you back less than you love them, is this. Trust the feeling in your stomach. The body knows before the mind admits. If something is wrong, it is wrong. Get help. Get cameras. Get a lawyer who is older than your children. Get a friend like Costas who owes you something from 1989. Document everything. Stay quiet. Let them think they're winning. The man who built something from $80 and a napkin does not get stupid in his 70s. He gets careful. He gets patient. And when the time comes, he does not raise his voice. He just makes a phone call. I am sitting on my back patio as I record this, looking at the harbor and at the fig tree that is heavy with fruit again this year. And I want to tell you the truth about what happened. Not the version that makes me look clever, but the version that's actually useful to someone who might be where I was 8 months ago. Theodora did not become a thief overnight. I've thought about this for a long time. Somewhere between the girl I taught to ride a bicycle and the woman who laughed in my own living room about putting me in a beige room to die, there were 1,000 small moments where I let things slide. I let her speak to her mother sharply once when she was 19, and I said nothing. I let Bradford correct my English in front of the boys at Thanksgiving, and I laughed it off. I gave when I should have asked questions. I funded when I should have watched. Cause and effect is not a complicated idea. The character my daughter built was the character I let her build, and that is a hard sentence for any father to say out loud. But here's the other side of cause and effect. The reason I'm still in my house and not in Hillcrest Manor counting jelly beans is because 47 years ago, a young man with $80 decided he would never be careless about a thing again. Every habit I built since 1976, the receipts I kept, the contracts I read twice, the friends I made who owed me favors, the trust I set up when Despina got sick. Every one of those small disciplines was a brick in a wall I did not know I was building. When the storm came, the wall held. That is not luck. That is decades of doing the boring thing correctly when nobody was watching. I want to say something to anyone who is older and listening. The world will tell you that wisdom is soft, that age makes you gentle, that you should let things go and forgive everything because the years are short. I do not believe that. I think wisdom is the opposite. I think wisdom is knowing exactly when softness is a gift and when softness is a weakness someone will use against you. Theodora counted on the soft version of me. She did not get him. To my grandsons, when they are old enough to watch this, I want them to know that their grandfather was not cruel. I was patient. There is an enormous difference. Cruelty acts on the moment. Patience acts on the truth. The truth was that their mother had committed a crime, and the consequence of that crime was hers to carry, not mine to forgive on her behalf. If you are watching this and someone in your life is starting to treat you like a problem to be solved, listen to that feeling. Get the cameras. Call the older lawyer. Build the wall before the storm. Decency is not weakness. Effort is not optional. And nobody, not even the daughter you raised, gets to decide your life is over until you say it is.